Now we have started the story A Trump of Surgery in previous video, and we learned about that Tricky, a small dog, is pampered and overfed by his rich mistress. Now he falls seriously ill and his mistress consults a veterinarian surgeon. Now does he perform an operation or does the dog recover? So that answer we find in the second part of that story. Here you see in this picture, students, when Dr. James suggests Mrs. Humphreys that she send the Tricky along with him to his surgery, and all the staff of Mrs. Humphreys was in tears. Now what happened next? Now Tricky laid motionless on the carpet. Many other dogs in the hospital sniffed around him and found him uninterested in everything. Tricky was put on a water diet for first 2 days. At the end of the second day, Tricky started to show some interest in his surroundings. On the third day, he whimpered. Whimpered means cried in low and weak sound. Trotted means walk slowly, and joined the greyhound means hunting dogs in the garden, as you look in this picture. Later on the third day, he ran with enthusiasm when the food was served. He also glubbed means swallowed down the extra food that was put out for him. Now Tricky recovered at a very fast pace means speed. No medicine had been given to Tricky for his treatment. He had started running all day long and enjoyed with other dogs. He found joy in being bowled over and squashed. He became a part of the gang of dogs at the hospital. He not only fought with them for food but also chased rats with them at night. Now Mrs. Humphreys' concern. She used to phone that vet's clinic several times in a day, as she was keen to know about Tricky's recovery. Dr. James did not pay much attention to her questions about Tricky's dressings, but he assured her that Tricky was out of danger. As Tricky's health started improving, Mrs. Humphreys started sending additional food items like eggs, wine, and brandy for Tricky, as this was not required in Tricky's diet. The vet and his partner consumed these additional items themselves. Everybody was so happy with the unusual delicious food that they wanted to keep Tricky's as a permanent guest. Now, as Dr. James knew that Mrs. Humphreys loved Tricky was very much, he called and informed her that Tricky was fit and could go home. Mrs. Humphrey reached the surgery within half an hour. Mrs. Humphrey inquired about Tricky's actual condition. Dr. James informed her that Tricky was fine and went to get Tricky from the garden. Tricky had become healthy and strong in his 2 weeks stay at the surgery. As soon as the dog saw his owner, he jumped into her lap and started licking her face. Mrs. Humphrey was very happy at finding Tricky as excited as he used to be. She thanked Dr. James Harriet and called the treatment a trump of surgery. So students, this is the story of Tricky, a small dog of Mrs. Humphrey, which was infected by overeating, and how Dr. James recovered him. So students, you have to read this story and find the questions asked in the lesson.